Hello there. All right, Krishnadevaraya. No, I butchered that. The epic story of medieval India's greatest king. I'm definitely not being able to read today or talk, apparently. But yeah. Apparently that's the person's name. Krishna. I'll just call him Krishna. Krishna's easier to say.
The year is 1509 CE, and the Vijayanagar Empire is recovering from a half-century of war and instability. An era of unprecedented prosperity and opportunity awaits. But while Vijayanagar stands on the precipice of historical greatness, unexpected challenges threaten to rip the empire apart at the seams. Back in the capital, Emperor Veeranarsima is dying of a mysterious illness. A replacement must be chosen, and fast. Enter Krishnadevaraya, otherwise known as KDR, half-brother of the sickly emperor.
KDR. Okay, that's easier to say. All right, so a mysterious illness is taking the king, and someone's going to take the throne, of course. Is it something that is caused to him? I mean, then again, it's history, and if it wasn't jotted down like he was poisoned, we'll never know. They just say a mysterious illness is taking him. I mean, maybe someone wants power, and that's the thing. People always want more.
Capable, clever, and proven, KDR is the logical choice. But Veeranarsima has other plans. He intends for his own 8-year-old son to inherit the empire. Besides, KDR isn't fit for the throne. No. As the unplanned love child of a lowly servant woman, his royal blood has been diluted to the point of illegitimacy. In theory.
Oh my gosh, I hate that. I hate that where people say blood is worth more. It's just disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. It's just like again, we know better now. Of course, there's still people who think that, oh, the purity of blood is everything, which is just a stupid mindset to have. I know, it's something. It's just like, if you think blood is everything, clearly there's the world's too small to believe something like that. We know much more about the world. The world is such a tiny little thing now, especially when you can talk to everyone around the world in a matter of seconds. You can reach people around the world. Yes, there's still the language barrier that's in people's way, or understanding, or translation issues, things like that get in people's way, but to think that blood is it's always funny going back and realizing that everyone, no matter where they were in the world, they all thought the same exact thing, that blood was important. It's so funny to look back and go, at least the world everywhere was barbaric. No one believed something like, oh, we should judge people off their character. We should value people off their knowledge. We should value off of things that really matter, instead of the fact that we all have blood in our veins. I mean, sorry, it's just funny to see it, because I watch all this other stuff. Yes, they always reference it, but right here it's just like, I don't know, it just hit different, because I don't know why I was thinking like, it's always like technologically advanced. India always had all this great superior minds, had all this stuff. They were like a world power, and then they go to talking about like the bloodline, and I'm like, okay, it's good to know that everyone was just as had the same kind of barbaric mindset. the blue blood mindset.
Though KDR is an outcast prince, his wit and charisma have earned him many powerful allies. Most notably, the Prime Minister Timurasu, who has been preparing him for years to ascend the Lion Throne. And so when the Emperor orders that KDR be blinded to prevent his enthronement, the Prime Minister hatches a clever alternative plan. Timurasu slaughters a goat and takes the eyes to the dying emperor, and the eyes are sufficiently human-like to fool the emperor. Veeranarsima.
Well, who would look at? Well, then again, goat's eyes, I don't think look. I mean, like if you were taking a fish eyes, that would be completely obvious that it's not. Goat's eyes, dog eyes aren't similar. Cat's eyes, definitely not. I don't know about goats, but I thought they were wider and bigger. Maybe the color was similar enough, and he is aging and ill. What would be the closest? Now, that's an interesting, the barbaric thing to think, but what would be the closest similarity? I know the closest animal similar to us in like organs and everything is a pig, which is why we can do like transplants with like pig organs and things like that to certain kinds, because they're the right size, they do the right thing, they're like exactly blood compatible. There are a lot of similarities, so it's like but eyes though, That's interesting, because I never even thought about that. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I normally thought animals had these big eyes. I mean, just looking at Bolt, who's chewing on a treat right there. I mean, he has those husky. He's a mutt, of course, but he has those bright blue, whitish husky eyes. Very, very bright blue, and they're amazingly beautiful. But those would never pass for human. But then again, I wonder if they're barbaric thought. I wonder if they're the right size, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's just an interesting thought. I never thought about it.
Breathes a sigh of relief and dies, falsely believing that his son will inherit the empire as intended. But Timarasu sets his own plan in motion. He crowns KDR as the new emperor of Vijayanagar. The enterprising KDR is determined to lead the empire to glory, but dangerous enemies lie in wait for an opportunity to strike. To the east, the arrogant Gajapati king fumes at the prospect of having to engage with Vijayanagar leadership, whom he considers to be low-caste mongrels. His hatred is a powder keg ready to explode.
Yeah, this one's filled with like the barbarity of the well, everyone's past medieval kind of mindset, the caste system. Like even like with like what is it? The European was the knights, and they were a higher value to like the peasant, and like there's always tiers no matter where you go in the world. Always. I mean, even now there's that kind of thing, not to the degree that it was, but there are people who will go into communities and look down upon those other communities. Like here, there are people who live in the big cities. When they go to a smaller city and start seeing like the what would be the right term to say, like the lesser way, like not the lesser way of living, but like the more not traditional, more of a simple way of living. They enjoy their lives. They have fun. They'll go out. They'll occasionally do things, but they're not the family that goes out to eat every day because they just can't afford it. I grew up kind of in the middle of that. We were a middle class family, but it was a lower middle class because my parents made the mistake of having 5 sons. And of course, my mother doesn't believe that was a mistake. My father might, honestly, because he's the father and he'd probably be the logical one when it comes to everything. But my mother's the emotional one. She's all, no, it was a miracle no matter what. But yeah, I mean, boys eat a lot. Me and my brothers are all 6 foot and taller. And it's just, imagine how much we ate when we were in our teens. It's just insane. Yeah, we probably ate several paychecks worth. So yeah, it makes yeah. But yeah, that mindset is still there for people when they go and see how other people live. I know it was like for me when I was growing up, and I'd go to someone's house when I was healthy enough to, and I'd see they'd have a much better life. They'd have a completely different. Well, I say better life, but that's not exactly true. There was massive problems in the family, but you don't notice that when you're a kid. You don't pay attention to those kind of things. You just pay attention to like, how does he have all this stuff when my family has, kids that you don't think. So, but having that mindset when you grow old, people still have some thoughts like that. People still look at other people and value them based on, look at Instagram. You start judging people based off how they live their life. Or how they look. Not to mention that most people on Instagram or a lot of people on Instagram, I can't say most people, but a huge portion of them use like filters and constantly, like you wouldn't recognize them in real life just because they don't live the same life as they do online, because they want to put out this persona forward. And it's just, there's a lot of that where people want to be perceived as, I don't want to say better than they are, because there's nothing wrong with being yourself, but there's this world view that's put onto people. But that goes way off the mark. They were just talking about the caste system, and I went off on a tirade there, but I'm sorry. Yeah, people still have that kind of mindset now, and it's hard. I'm pretty sure I fall under that too. I drive down the street, and the worst thing here, especially in the state of California, is like the homelessness, and you just wonder, why is it our government gives money to them without trying to either medicate or give them help. Instead of giving them help, they'll give them money. Or instead of trying to find help and invest in help, they give money to, illegal immigrants instead who don't belong here. And I say don't belong here sounds crude, but it didn't get here legally through the legal channels, I should say. But yeah, it's like some things don't make sense. And it bothers me because it's just, again, it's not so much the people that bother me. It's the fact that the government itself is failing drastically to help. But yeah, every nation has their problems. Even now, every system of government, everything is flawed. Every single one. Yeah.
To the north, the Bahmani Sultanate has splintered into 5 smaller Deccan sultanates.
Sheesh.
In the chaos, a number of ambitious foreigners grapple for control. And to the west, the Portuguese are beginning to assert themselves. Welcome to the pulsing heart of medieval India. When KDR ascended the Lion Throne, the Vijayanagar Empire was nearly 200 years old and enjoyed a long and storied history. From the very beginning, sages spoke reverently about the empire and its destiny. It was always meant to be something more, something different than the stagnancy and divisiveness of the past. Let's travel back to the early 14th century for a quick recap.
Oh my gosh, this is going to start confusing me when they jump through time like this, but I like that it's the DeLorean. But yeah, it's sad when like the vision of or power or that too many pure bloods or offshoot family trees of the pure line end up striving for power. They marry off to other places. They all believe they deserve the throne. It's like that power corrupts.
By 1310 CE, the Sultan in Delhi, Alauddin Khilji, having heard stories of the prosperous south, he sent the Gujarati eunuch Malik Kafur, his trusted slave commander and lover, to conquer the peninsula. Malik Kafur was a brilliant militarist and had an overwhelming numbers advantage. In just a few short years, he swept through most of South India and toppled its major dynastic powers. The Deccan and the rest of South India was left shattered. In the wake of this invasion, Bukka and Harihara, 2 brothers who had served in the Kakatiya court, found themselves prisoner to the Sultan in Delhi.
See, this is why I said I had trouble with time, because I was like, what happened to KDR? But yeah, they mentioned they're going back to 14 CE, something like that.
Though controversial, it appears that the 2 brothers converted to Islam in an attempt to curry political favor with the Sultan. Alauddin Khilji rewarded them with the governorship in their native land. But when they returned to the southern Deccan, they began to reconsider their new allegiances. The 2 brothers encountered a respected Hindu sage who showed them a promising vision of the future. They were destined to establish a legendary empire and lead a unified fight against Turkic forces. Bukka and Harihara immediately converted back to Hinduism and, going on a militarized tour of South India, carved out the beginnings of the Vijayanagar Empire in 1336 CE. Vijayanagar thrived for more than a century under the Sangama lineage, and though the empire began as a local Hindu bastion, it eventually grew into a multi-ethnic, multi-religious powerhouse. For example, under Emperor Devaraya II in the early 15th century, Muslim immigrants were welcomed into the empire and given titles, lands, and choice positions within the imperial administration. If that wasn't surprising enough, Devaraya II's daughter was married to the Bahmani Sultan, Feroz Shah. Social customs, music, and even clothing were changing to reflect the incredible diversity of the empire. Under the Sangama dynasty, the capital of Vijayanagar became...
But like I said, the blood is getting diluted. He gave his daughter to another person. I'm pretty sure everyone's going to want to establish themselves as the main authority. That's why they're going back to now where it's strong and powerful, and there was a fight over the throne, and the real descendant doesn't get the throne, but I don't want to curse, but the illegitimate son, that's the word. The illegitimate son... an illegitimate offspring ends up sitting on the throne, and of course everyone else thinks that they are more worthy of the throne than that. And I'm just speculating here, but still,
the second largest city in the world, trailing only Beijing and ahead of Paris. Many different communities called the city their home. People from throughout India, of course, but also Venetian merchants, Persian diplomats, Malay sailors, Chinese engineers, and Ethiopian mercenaries. The empire grew and prospered. But dynastic squabbling characterized the latter half of the 15th century. After a Red Wedding-esque murder plan by Devaraya II's brother to claim the throne, the empire sank into chaos. The Bahmani Sultanate and the Gujrapati Kingdom invaded simultaneously, chipping away at the borderlands and destabilizing feudal networks. This was followed by an oral-obsessed emperor who ignored his royal duties. And so came the first dynastic change in the empire's long history, the Sulavas, a desperate attempt to salvage a grand, deteriorating power. But the bleeding continued. The Gujrapati Kingdom was now firmly entrenched in the Krishna River Delta, and the Bahmani Sultanate raided the empire indiscriminately. Enter Narasa Nayaka, the father of KDR and the founder of the third Vijayanagar dynasty, the Tuluvas. Narasa Nayaka did not engage in any fakery regarding his caste. He was a proud Shudra warlord who had attained the rank of general and subsequently forced himself upon the throne. His efforts stabilized the Vijayanagara Empire, though it continued to be exposed to conflicts both without and within. In 1504 CE, leadership fell to his son Viranarasimha.
But I thought they said it was a strong, powerful empire, and then they start talking about all the wars and battles that were fought and everything. I'm just like, okay, that kind of negates what was said at the beginning when they traveled back in time and it was established and powerful. No, it's been being fought over since the beginning. But I guess that makes sense. I guess that does make sense because they were just fighting for the throne. They didn't destroy the infrastructure and it just kept getting stronger, I guess. I don't know. I guess I missed a few things. Trying to follow.
And in 1509 CE, the throne finally passed to our enterprising friend KDR, who would mold the Vijayanagara Empire into one of the greatest in Indian history.
Oh yeah. Because it's about how he basically made it powerful because it was nothing but squabbles beforehand. All right, I'm following. I told you the whole jumping around time always confused me. But yeah, it's about how he basically unified it when other people were given the vision of what would become.
KDR developed a reputation as a man of many dualities: short-tempered and kind, courageous and scholarly, rational and impulsive. He was also a man who was willing to act in defiance of tradition. To understand, let's explore his Bollywood-esque love story. In the early years of his reign, KDR performed intelligence gathering on his own. Come nightfall, after his official duties were complete, he would disguise himself as a commoner and would slip out of the palace under the cover of darkness.
Aw, it's like a reverse Aladdin story, isn't it? That's sweet.
Roaming the busy streets of Vijayanagar and interacting with its residents. But getting his finger on the pulse of the empire was not the only goal of these reconnaissance missions. In truth, the newly crowned emperor would spend many of his nights meeting the beautiful courtesan Krishnadevaraya. Their connection had been established long before his enthronement. According to the Portuguese chronicler Nunes, when KDR was growing up in the capital, he developed a secret relationship with Krishnadevaraya. His affection for her was so great that he promised marriage should he win the throne. But she was nothing more than a low-caste dancing girl from Telugu country, and so KDR could not formally take her on as his wife. His many promises to her could not be realized, or so one would think. One evening, when KDR was in disguise and on his way to Krishnadevi's house, he was discovered by his prime minister, Timarasu, who had quietly followed him out of the palace. Timarasu rebuked the young emperor and they walked back to the palace together. But during this walk and talk, KDR was not shy about his thoughts and feelings towards Krishnadevi. He disclosed everything, including the marriage promise that he fully intended to honor. When
He's gonna step off the throne if he has to in order to... that is a very romantic gesture. I mean, or is it like the Prince Harry situation where this conniving woman basically took power because all she wanted was power? She doesn't really care about anything else. A mediocre actress, kind of like the Eva Perón story. This woman who did, or I guess you could say about the American VP at this point in time, someone who basically does what they can to just get into a place of power, get into the limelight, get into, because they like the attention. They like to feel perfect. They like to feel great. And then afterwards you find out, oh, they aren't exactly what they portray themselves to be. Yeah, it's one of those things. Hopefully the one he cares about isn't like that. It is actually a genuine good human being. I mean, she is a courtesan, so maybe?
Timarasu told KDR that such a marriage would not be possible. The young emperor stood his ground and proclaimed that he would sooner give up the throne than Krishnadevi. Timarasu reflected on the situation at hand. See, Timarasu was much more than an advisor. He was a father figure who had in many ways raised KDR, and for this he was affectionately called Appaji. And so a compromise solution was drawn up. Timarasu agreed to marry KDR to Krishnadevi in secret, but first the young emperor would have to take the Mysorean princess Thirumala Devi as his principal queen. This would resolve ongoing political conflicts in the southernmost territories and ensure that at least...
So his real wife would be the concubine. Concubine? Mistress? Whatever. I think those are both the same term.
One of his marriages was seen as legitimate. KDR was passionate, yes, but capable of compromise. He married Durmila Devi first, and then quietly wed Chinnadevi in a forest on the outskirts of the capital. And though she was his second wife and could not give him royal heirs, Chinnadevi was KDR's true love till the end of his life, his favored queen. This duality of passion and practicality, of defiance and tradition, would not just play out in his romantic life. As a prolific writer, KDR expressed these and other dualities in verse. In his masterpiece work, Amukta Malyada, KDR describes medieval India as politically deteriorated, teeming with self-serving lords and greedy bureaucrats. As such, even his commitment to the
Same thing. It doesn't change. No matter how advanced or progressive you get, it's still greedy, hungry people trying to be greedy and hungry. None of that ever really changes. You just need to, yeah. So he's talking about how it's doing that. It's like, but the world still does that now.
The traditional ideal of a righteous king was a form of defiance, a full-throated challenge to the corrupt elites of his era. According to Domingo Pace, who interacted with KDR and lived in Vijayanagar for a time, he was the most feared and perfect king that could possibly be, cheerful of disposition and very merry. He is a great ruler and a man of much justice, but subject to sudden fits of rage. And he gives, not out of formality, but as a token of friendship and love. Before taking the throne, KDR had proven a brilliant commander. He was undefeated, in fact, and so it was expected that he would exercise great skill in leading the military. This prediction would prove remarkably accurate. After a reconfiguring of tax and military assessments, KDR's treasury was full and his armies replenished. Withholding lords were punished and brought to heel. KDR now had
Yep. You have to bring those who to heal. You got to bring those who are honestly going to cause more problems in the long run to heal.
the resources to flex his military strength and to maintain and expand the empire's borders. Thus began the first of many expeditions, this one against an uprising by the Gangaraja of Umatur. KDR dispatched a small but well-equipped force to the area. His armies then surrounded the fortress and suffocated its supply.
See, the thing I'm always curious about is, like, why do people try to take power? Is it because there's an issue in their territory? Like, let's say they're not given a fair handshake in the empire. I guess I'll use the word in that empire. They're not given a fair shake, and they believe they could do better. Is that why or is it they just want power? They've got a taste of power. I mean, it's a bit of both sometimes, I guess, and they try to sway the people saying, oh, we could have more. Look at that. I will give you all this if I could sit on the, those kind of empty promises because they're greedy themselves. Or is it like the first one where they're struggling? Maybe they're dealing with like a drought or a famine of some kind, or they can't grow certain crops that are absolutely needed, and they need more, but they're still having to pay the dues to the king, and the king isn't saying, oh, well, I don't care about is basically saying, oh, I don't care about the people because you still got to pay your dues even though you're dealing with that and not sending aid. I mean, there's many reasons as to why people could stand up and fight. All we know is that they fought. They challenged them. They revolted. But why? There almost always, or there has to always be a reason why. Everyone does things for some reason, whether it's family, whether it's personal gain, whether it's survival. There is a reason for it. And I'm curious as to why a lot of the people, most of it, let's be honest, would be personal gain. But I'm curious if there was ever anything else. Again, we wouldn't know because history is written by those who normally are victorious. You rarely ever get to hear the other side. I mean, just like how most people view, well, what Britain talked about India. It was all what everyone believed. And then you start learning about it and it's like, oh, well, this very famous person around the world isn't very well respected. In the one territory, everyone believes he's well respected. Yeah, it's just one of those things you start to learn over time. Because, like I said, the world's very, very, very small. And we are, especially living here in the West, you see it, a lot of us are small-minded. And we refuse to learn anything outside of our little bubble. I mean, look at the whole woke issue that's happening now in the U.S. Anyone who thinks that mindset, thinks anyone that doesn't think that mindset is a terrible human being. Because, well, if you're not inclusive of everything and you refuse to accept me, you are an evil human being. But then again, that's the same mindset that you are pushing onto the world is what you're claiming they are. I mean, it's very interesting. But yeah, I'm always curious as to why people acted as they did. Why did this man stand up to revolt?
No. After a year had passed, the Ganga Raja surrendered and the revolt was quelled. Following this victory, KDR entered into a marriage alliance with the defeated Ganga Raja's daughter, Thirumala Devi, and toured the southern regions. With the southern country stabilized, KDR could turn his attention fully to the north. By the early 1500s, the Bahmani Sultanate had collapsed, dividing into 5 independent successor dynasties. KDR sought to weaken these neighboring powers by playing them against one another in an ever-shifting game of alliances, and by engaging in some good old-fashioned warfare. And so, when, in 1511 CE, Vijayanagar spies reported that the Bijapuri Sultan Yusuf Adil Shah had used insolent words to describe KDR, the famously short-tempered and impulsive emperor felt that this was sufficient justification for war, though some sources indicate that there was pre-existing bad blood. Decades prior, Yusuf Adil Shah had feigned peace with KDR's father and invited him to an outdoor event. At this event, the Adil Shah then suddenly betrayed Narasimhana's trust and attacked him, nearly killing him and his entourage of nobles.
So that's why there's bad
KDR
blood.
was furious at this audacious behavior and decided to punish the Bijapuri Sultan for his many transgressions. He brought his armies to meet Yusuf Adil Shah and his allies by the banks of the Krishna River. On the advice of the influential Telugu lord Ramalingama Naidu, KDR sent out a detachment of Kamma warriors to sow discord among the Bijapuri ranks and to cut the ropes of their symbolic battle tent. The Kamma detachment rushed towards the battle tent, around which the allied sultans had mobilized their infantry, cavalry, and elephant corps. But as Ramalingama and his men approached the enemy forces, they suddenly dismounted from their horses and leapt onto the backs of the sultan's elephants. The acrobatic Kamma warriors sliced at the elephants' trunks and skewered the mahouts. This caused the maddened elephants to lose control, trampling on their...
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, you could talk about beheading humans. You could talk about how you're gonna get information by, you know, hurting them consistently. But when it comes to an animal, that hurts me. That hurts me to hear, because it's like elephants are these powerful, majestic, beautiful creatures. Very intelligent, and here I am okay with like humans being treated that way, but it's like, oh my gosh, you hear it and it hurts to hear. It absolutely hurts to hear, because an elephant, I like elephants. I mean, not as much as cows. I still want a cow. I've always wanted a cow. I probably will never have one because they'd be a lot of work, absolutely a lot of work. But it just, I've always wanted a cow.
their allies and disrupting their defenses. In the midst of this bloody chaos, Ramalingama snuck his way into the battle tent, cut the ropes, and collapsed it. Just like that, the morale of the enemy was broken. KDR sounded the battle drums and mounted his own elephant, charging in with the rest of the Vijayanagar forces. Bijapuri forces began to retreat to the other side of the Krishna River, but at that moment, the water swelled. The Bijapuris and their allies panicked and jumped headlong into the swirling river. Many of them drowned. Others, mostly nobles and officers, dismounted and got into boats which allowed them to make their way across the river safely. At some point during this river retreat, KDR personally slew Yusuf Adil Shah. Hail Krishnadevaraya! With a fierce and unified attack, you crushed the skulls of Persian warriors like melons, and built a gruesome effigy with the Adil Khan's head. He ordered that his men go forth into Bijapuri territory and pillage the land, bringing great devastation upon the Sultanate and its people.
All right, I need to stop it right there. This is going to end up turning into a very long video. It's going to, I just keep babbling and babbling and babbling and finding something to talk about. And this is already a very informative video with a lot of substance. And I just need to separate it into 2 parts. But yeah, this is absolutely fascinating. I'll get the second part out soon. Yeah, thank you all for watching. Talk to you next time. Doodles.